Tonight, we will Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot for Star Trek The Next Generation. But even more exciting than that, we have actual news about Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Weekly starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
So dramatic with the lights.
I don't know. Isn't this the theme from Star Trek The Motion Picture? I'm so confused. Is this the theme from Star Trek The Motion Picture? Is it the theme from The Next Generation?
Says generation.
Wait a
on the
minute.
YouTube
It's
video.
the theme from both. That's what it was.
Oh my goodness.
And our
That's
last
a trick
episode,
question.
yeah, that's right. Anyway, welcome to Star Trek Weekly. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by Kari Lane, Frank Moran, as we say, on assignment.
He got beamed up.
Yeah, he's got something going on for level 31, but we'll find out hopefully next week, and we'll see him then. So as I mentioned in the intro, we are going to talk about Encounter at Farpoint. I actually forget what it was in the conversation that inspired me in our last episode. That
Q and magic.
Just Q and magic, yeah. All right, and we'll watch some more Q episodes soon. But so we'll talk about that. But before we get to it, there's some actual news about Star Trek Discovery.
Woo!
And it had been a long time because season 1 ended, and then it was like, all right, so there'll be more, but we don't, and we didn't know anything. They were playing everything very close to the vest. And it's one of the things I don't know about you, Kari, but one of the things that I preferred about the old model for TV, and not just network TV, there was first run syndication, and really even HBO used to follow this. Your show ended, and then it would come back the next year around the same time. Or if it was a network show, it ended in May, it came back in September, maybe October. Great, you could always count on it. But now it's like, well, we'll be back in 2 years, or Do you find it hard to keep up on some shows? Like, are there shows that you've lost track of because the schedule is so intermittent?
I don't know if I've lost track of them, but I'm always a little more surprised when it comes back. Like, for example, I'm doing Legion, Westworld, and Handmaid's Tale, and all those shows are, Hulu is Handmaid's Tale, Westworld is HBO, and Legion is FX. So they're all very different platforms. So I was like, it's coming up, and then you forget about it, and then because you're like, oh, that's gonna be so long to wait like a year, but then it's like, oh, and now it's here because for example, Westworld, I did a marathon at New Year's, and now I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't that long to wait along.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's going to be a long time, and then it just comes up. I don't know. Have you forgotten about shows?
It's sort of, that was kind of the problem with the old model. A show that I liked was the FX show Rescue Me, but I never knew when it came back. I watched it for a couple seasons, and then I was like, wait, there have been 2 more seasons that I just didn't know about. And, in those days, it wasn't like, oh, I'll just grab the episodes out of the sky and watch them. You had to kind of catch them when they were on. So, it does happen. And usually what happens is the pleasant surprise, because I still have cable, I have a DVR, so things will just show up, and I'm like, oh, that's back.
Oh,
great.
Yeah, that's good. You got that doing it for you. I guess Netflix and other platforms are the other way, where I'm like, oh, this is on this is available now, or it's to DVD. That's more of I lose track of. Maybe I think I do it more of movies than TV shows. I'll really want to go see a movie, I'll miss it, and then be like, did that come out yet?
Yeah.
Or where is that?
And then when you find out that the movie you wanted to see did come out and nobody talked about it, you're like, oh, yikes, maybe I don't need to see it, maybe I'll see it a little later. So CBS All Access, the platform is kind of built on people wanting Star Trek Discovery, to some extent The Good Fight, but you'd think that we would already know when it's coming back, but they don't know. And when it ended in January, they were just like, well, we'll let you know. We'll keep you posted.
Well, I guess the problem is also special effects sci-fi show stuff could take
it does
longer,
take a while, yeah. And but so the news we have first is that it is back into production. They are actually in production on season 2. Yeah. So that's quicker than I thought, because I thought they were going to do a lot of retooling, and I think that they're going to take a little bit of time. They were a little concerned about some of the tonal issues of the first season, stuff that. by the time the episodes aired, I think had been sorted out because they had to do some reshoots and they had to slow down production. So they
or
really
get feedback.
Yeah, right. And now you've gotten
liked it.
feedback. You know what people like. So I think that that's an exciting bit of news. And yes, they'll film and then the special effects, because I felt like the show had great special effects.
Yeah, looks
so
really good.
please take your time. Don't rush them. You know, that's not what we need. You know, like when a movie's rushed through the 3D conversion and you're like, why didn't you just leave it as 2D? It hurts my eyes now. So take your time.
Or you see the 3D gag that you're like, yeah, that was the gag.
You're like, thanks. So anyway, I think it's great to know that the show's back. And one of the things that we were wondering on this show, and people have been wondering about in general, is at the end of season 1 of Discovery, we saw the Enterprise. And they were getting held by Captain Pike. And there were some questions. Well, who's going to play Captain Pike? There were some people who wondered if it would be Bruce Greenwood, who plays him in the J.J. Abrams movies, which I guess is the easiest thing to call those movies. But we have casting information as to who it will be. And Tony B. Tony in the booth. If you can bring up the image, it is indeed Anson Mount, who played Black Bolt on the, I guess we can now say, short-lived Marvels and Humans. And we have this image that I actually don't know who we should give credit for it to, but look at him side by side with Jeffrey Hunter. You're like, that's a great choice. And Kari and I do Marvel TV Weekly together, and for people who watch that show, know that I actually really liked the Inhumans, even though most people didn't. And I thought he did a good job as Black Bolt. I think that's
he was good on it.
Incredibly tough role of like, well, you know, you can't talk. Ever.
Or actually, even more than that. Technically, he can't even really open his mouth. Like, exhaling
that's true.
with his mouth could kill somebody.
Yeah, so it's like, you're not gesturing, you can't smile, you can't show teeth. Yeah, exactly. So
sealed lips.
I am interested in seeing how he does. I mean, I've seen him in some other things.
Okay, I was going to ask.
He was on a show called Hell on Wheels on AMC. Frank and I had a conversation on Twitter about it when it was announced. So since he's not here, I'll just mention, he thinks it's an okay choice. He's, of course, cautiously optimistic. I don't know who they were going to pick. He's certainly not who I had in mind. But when I saw it, I'm like, great.
From what you've seen him in, though, do you feel he fits?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, because if they have him play it like Jeffrey Hunter played it in The Cage, and essentially how he sort of played it in The Menagerie, it'll be interesting to see if they have him, just do his own take on it, because, I mean, Harry Mudd was very different, so I don't think they're going to have to stick to that. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
True.
So, knowing him mostly from The Inhumans, are you interested to see what he can do as Captain Pike?
Yeah, because on Inhumans, he's a very stoic king leader role. So him being a captain is not that much of a far fetch. I'm like, yeah. But I'd need to hear him speak. I actually don't really know what he sounds like much.
What if he has like a super high squeaky voice?
Be like,
and you'd be like, oh no.
Much.
Well, he doesn't. If he had like a Jennifer Tilly voice, that would be perfect.
That'd be funny.
Just some other light news about the show, about Star Trek Discovery. Alex Kurtzman is going to direct the season 2 premiere, and Akiva Goldsman will write that episode. Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker himself, will direct the 2nd and 10th episodes of the season. Now, we don't know how many episodes there are, but we know now there's at least 10. I actually expected more than 10, so...
Maybe a 13 run?
Well, yeah, this last one was 17, because I think they were originally going to do more, and then it was a weird number. But, yeah, I think 13 is solid. I will be very happy with that.
Yeah, lately 13, anything more or less feels, depending on how much fluff they put in there, how much content, it's like, no, that's a solid time period.
And one of the episodes, we will get a lengthy flashback to young Michael Burnham, who we saw some flashbacks in season 1. So that'll be interesting.
I'd want to see some other ages too, because we see her as really young and then
rebellious
young adult.
Teenager.
I want to see the teenager. Yeah,
I agree. I think that would be interesting. It was a bad time, drink of water. But anyway, and comedian Tig Notaro is going to join the cast as a chief engineer of the USS Hiawatha. So I assume you hire a comedian because maybe it'll be somewhat of a light part, but I guess we'll see. So this is just little news, but honestly, after so much time of no news,
Yes.
and I think it's great that we finally are getting a little bit of news, and they're going to pay off. There's in the episode Context is for Kings, we see some of the insignia, the black Delta shields from Section 31, which I somehow called Level 31 before. Anyway, we always. With Star Trek, you always admit your mistake when you realize it because someone's going to point out your mistake to you anyway. So it is something that they, I believe, are going to deal with in season 2. There's a deleted scene from the season 1 finale, I guess, that was shown at WonderCon. So and that introduced a character, actor Alan Van Sprang from Shadowhunters. Don't know him, but. Yeah,
haven't gone around to
I
Shadowhunters
mentioned
yet.
that in case somebody watching is like, hey, I love me some Shadowhunters. Anyway, let us know what you think about what you're hearing about season 2 of Discovery. How excited are you? Are you willing to wait? Because look, what we do know is that it's going to come back in 2019. So here it is. It's April.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm like, maybe I'll wait till like the fall. Sure. I'm like, oh yeah, it does make sense. Maybe the spring.
Yeah,
It'd be like January.
I feel
February.
like it'll probably be like about a year from now. It won't be. Like won't be January like 1st. But it'll be back. I think, but a year from
Maybe
now,
March.
I believe by this point next year we'll be in the thick of it.
Well, they could probably film it in like by the end of summer, and then the rest of the time is all post production.
Yeah, no, that's true. So, but anyway, let us know what you're excited about and what you're looking forward to. And we will mention that in the future here on Star Trek Weekly. All right, well, so for our homework assignment for this week, we asked all of you, and Kari and myself, to watch the pilot for Star Trek The Next Generation, Encounter at Farpoint. I have thoughts that I've had for the past 30 years, but I assume you had never watched this episode before.
I had not. I feel Next Gen was the one show I maybe caught pieces of because that was more like what was on TV.
Well, the time frame, because you were because I think what we narrowed it down to is that the first Star Trek movie you saw was
the 90s,
Insurrection, and that was the second standalone Next Generation movie.
Yeah.
So odds were decent that you probably caught some episodes here and there.
Yeah. But I was never a kid who liked watching something if I
Sure.
had no idea, so I didn't really.
Yeah, and
catch
that's
much, yeah.
and it's not a show that you're gonna. I'm honestly the
jump
same
in, yeah.
the same way now. The only show I ever did that with was X-Files. Like I started watching in
Some of those are
in the second
standalone.
season, and I was like, well, there was no way to catch up at that point. So I'm like, I'm just gonna do it because everybody tells me to watch it. But other than that, there's shows I'm just like, nope, can't do it.
I thought it was super interesting that this was essentially like the pilot
Yeah.
for the new Star Trek series. I'm like, this is a very interesting tone. But I like how Riker at the end of the episode is like, I hope all our adventures won't be like this.
Yeah.
I felt maybe that's the writers like, don't worry, it's not gonna all be like
Right.
this.
Well, so there's a lot of behind the scenes drama that we'll get to in a moment. But
Whoa.
just as an episode, watching it, can you imagine, have to put yourself in the situation. You've never seen, maybe you've seen the original Star Trek. This is very hypothetical. But you've never seen this. This is new. Are you like, after that, well, without commercials, it's an hour and a half. After that 90 minutes, you're like, all right, I'll check this out again. Or you're like, I've seen enough.
No, it made me interested to watch more of the show. I thought it was cool that on Netflix it just is one long episode.
Yeah, it aired that way.
Cool. It was just a really long.
It aired as a 2-hour.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I would see more where I'd want to go because I'm like, this is tonally very not what I was expecting. Also, Patrick Stewart, I was like, I thought he was more pleasant later on.
And he is.
And so seeing him very grumpy was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then we talked about Riker having a beard or not. And it actually started to, pun intended, I'm like, it started to grow on me of him being clean shaven.
Right.
I'm like, that's not so bad. But I think he looks more sophisticated and in charge with the beard, but he's still like a good-looking dude without.
What it comes down to is that he's got like a cleft in his chin, and it's distracting. So
you don't like the butt chins?
No. So when you put the beard over it, I'm not distracted. But yeah, I think it's like much more dignified.
Yeah, it makes him seem more
like
captain-y, kind of distinguished.
Yeah.
Clean shaven, he seems too young.
He does come off as
Like his
very
face
young.
is more baby face. Like Patrick Stewart, maybe being bald and the white hair, and being older, he seems like a captain.
Yes.
But yeah.
And, so what I remembered from this
Yeah.
was watching it. And, obviously my family, we were very excited. There was a new Star Trek show. And, there's a lot of like,
I bet it was weird.
It was a little weird. Like we came right back. We were there all the way through the whole run of the show. But it was just like, all right, well, it's different. So you're gonna just have to deal with that.
I would check at least episode 2 and 3 before I made like a final decision.
Those are not as good as this. This is better than episodes 2 and 3.
Oh no.
Yeah, season 1 is very hit or miss. There are a couple of good episodes. Some people would say season 2 is not that great. Season 2 is okay, but it's very hit or miss.
Yeah.
There was an impending writer's strike. They used existing scripts, some of them from episodes of the original series, and they just adapted them. And then they had banked something for. They were going to do a TV series. It was called either Star Trek 2 or The Next Phase, depending on which point in the process. So they had some stuff that they could use.
Well, I guess it's also how much do you like the characters.
Yes.
Like, I think the first one, like introducing yourself to like Data was cool. Because I mean, I like that's a character. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that character. But it was like seeing the introduction of him, Georgie as well, and you're like reading Rainbow and Kunta Kinte.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
That's like, oh yeah, hey.
No, and I'm glad they took the time to explain his visor.
Yeah, like that, and without being like, over the top or boring or something. It just like felt like, yeah, it's a medical exam. Let's talk about it a little bit. Meet a new doctor. Cool. I don't know. I know Will Wheaton plays more into the show, but I actually didn't know that character at all.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the pilot they keep calling him Wes, and he's always Wesley. And there's a great meme of Captain Picard saying, "Shut up, Wesley," and that is from later. And it's kind of my feeling about Wesley Crusher is a lot of just shut up, Wesley.
Yeah, that's generally the sentiment.
And I'm about when this premiered 30 years ago, I was about the age of Will Wheaton was on the show, so I should have identified with him, but
you were like,
him.
no.
I was just like, no.
It's too bad that they had this character that. You're not the only one I've heard.
Yeah,
like,
there are some people that liked him,
okay.
but he seems like a good guy now. You see him in interviews, and he talks about it. Seems like a good guy, but his character was not something that I was particularly fond of. But I thought that the visuals are interesting because Counselor Troy looks very different than. Even in subsequent seasons.
Oh yeah,
they changed her a few times. They eventually put her in uniform. But they have like the little skirt. And
I was gonna
like
say, speaking of uniforms, I like the uniforms on this. Like the jumpsuit look is generally Star Trek my favorite. Like something where it looks like an aviator. Like it's one piece is great. I think the design is generally flattering for like any body type.
Yeah,
the diagonal lines.
They modify
black
it
and color.
slightly in subsequent seasons, and then there's complete redos later on. But yeah, I think. The uniforms are cool. The communicators, like just right there, instead of having to flip them open or in the motion picture, the wristwatch.
Only thing you mentioned, Troy. Is it Troy? Yeah.
Yeah.
Being like super practical of like, well, her in like short sleeve and a short dress. I was like, okay, I like visually. I'm like, sure, that makes sense. But in like thinking literally of it, like the people on the bridge have long sleeve and pants, and they must be comfortable in that temperature. And then she's in short sleeve, a little dress. I'm like, I don't think you're all going to be comfortable in the same atmosphere.
Yeah, well, she ends up in a jumpsuit that is.
I think I've seen her in that.
A lot of cleavage, basically.
Maybe not that one.
They go with that instead.
But do you remember that there's a dude walking around in a
dress? I was actually about to mention that.
And
that was like that was one of those sort of things that was very important to Gene Roddenberry. Sort of the idea that gender wasn't so important.
Well, I felt it was like
future.
a skirt where it's like shorts with the flap in front. I'm like, sure, but it felt weird. Of like, okay. Uniforms generally, if you're working in an environment, you should cover your legs and your arms in terms of like
especially
safety.
In
if
engineering.
he seemed like an engineer guy.
It was in engineering, yeah.
That
makes
makes
funny.
sense.
I had the same thought. By the way, hi to Star Drew in the chat. He's there. And we are talking about Encounter Farpoint Parts 1 and 2. He asked the question. So, we're dealing with the whole thing.
Because, I mean, I've had jobs where, like, I had to wear long sleeve and pants. Like, there was no question about that. Because you worked in an environment where, like, you couldn't have your skin showing because if, like, you could be injured.
Yeah,
So
no, exactly.
watching the show, I'm like,
It
come
was
on.
interesting.
Yeah.
One of the a little tidbit that I had brought to my attention
Yes.
is that the most Americans up until this point, the word DATA, they said data.
Oh,
And
data
they were
and
always
data.
referring to it as data. See, I said it
Yeah.
wrong already. But Patrick Stewart, being British, he calls him Mr. Data. And they wanted to call him Mr. Data.
Yeah.
And so he calls him Mr. Data. And then that sticks. He's one of the most popular characters on the show. So now when you're talking about, like on your cell phone,
Yeah.
your data plan, people do say data. I'm not saying they don't. But for the most part, you do hear the word data more often than data. Wait, I switched
I
it.
kind of feel like you could
switched it.
say both.
You can
like
say
that
both,
is one where it's
but
not
you used to
so different.
supposedly, and I was a kid at the time, so it's not like I can say I remember. You used to never hear data. It was always data. Everything was data.
Yeah, I feel that's kind of synonymous
Yeah.
now. Here's one that's a British word that I've only kind of heard it on books on tape, and I'm like, what? So advertisement,
Yeah.
and they say advertisement, and I'm
yes.
like, okay, now that sounds like whoa, that's
Yeah, like
a
why did you
wrong
do that?
way. Yeah,
That just sounds wrong.
or a
So-
solicitor, like that's a totally different word for us. Like that was an older word for lawyer.
Oh, okay, right.
But-
I was actually thinking
Yeah.
of like somebody who like solicits like door to door or
Yeah,
something.
but that was a lawyer.
That's a lawyer. So anyway, if that's
Yes.
true, that's the impact that this show had, is a word that people
data.
use all the time now. And I had trouble keeping it straight in my head. I was saying data when I meant data. And
Yeah, so thinking of cell phones and like your plan.
you usually
I feel
say
I hear
data.
both.
yeah, you can hear them both, but you used to only hear the one is the point.
yeah.
And so we can, if that's true, we can
Thank you, Star
Patrick
Trek.
Stewart and Star Trek in general. All right, so behind the scenes, there's a lot of drama.
Oh,
and
yes, please
There is
dish.
an amazing, it's on Netflix now. For a long time, it wasn't. There's an amazing documentary called Chaos on the Bridge.
Like, I'm gonna add this to my
You
queue
should
right
add
now.
that to your queue. It's narrated by William Shatner,
Nah.
who, if anybody had a vested interest in reveling in the pain caused by a new Star Trek that wasn't starring William Shatner, it would be William Shatner. So, but it is really well done. They have a lot of interviews with
I can spell
cast
chaos.
and writers of the show, and they focus primarily on the first season. So apparently,
There it
getting
is.
this script finished was a nightmare. Gene Roddenberry has a writing credit, but DC Fontana, who is a writer from the original series, also gets the writing credit. And there were things that were really important to him, but some of the tonal issues and the fact that the story is just like, oh, okay, it's not bad. In my mind, it was much worse. Rewatching it, I'm like, oh, this isn't actually that bad. It stems from Gene Roddenberry at this point in his life. He was really hands-on at a point when he probably shouldn't have been that hands-on. I mean, look, it's his baby. He created it. He had every right to be involved. But at some point he had to realize, and he was kind of forced to realize, that they had hired enough creative people who can actually make the show work. And there's so things like the guy in the skirt was important to him,
But it stood out and was kind of weird.
It was super weird. Just imagine seeing that in 1987 and like, what?
Well, if funny now, I'd be like that, and I was like, that's not what I expected.
I mean,
Yeah.
Dude Looks Like a Lady wasn't even a song yet. All right. So,
Well, I mean this in like all respect of like I was like, that's a very gay outfit. Like
Yeah. No. Yeah.
I'm like, that's what I'd see at a pride event. Like I don't like. And he
Which,
could,
by the way,
but
when-
he could have been a gay character. That would have been his outfit. But for an engineer, that felt the wrong outfit.
And by the way, for your Pride cosplay, that's a great,
Yes!
that's a suggestion
Yeah.
from us. Go
Well,
ahead. And
then is Futurama? Did that guy get inspired by that character who like doesn't wear pants or something? I don't watch a lot of Futurama, but there's a character on that who has like no pants. I'm like, maybe he saw this
maybe he
episode
saw that. Yeah,
and he was inspired by.
So anyway, so there's a
Yeah.
lot that went into this, and I think that even despite all of that, it's very, obviously having seen the show, you can see the hints of like, okay, there's a lot of good stuff to work with here.
Yeah.
Even this Jean-Luc Picard, who is not as likable, is still like they
Oh, he's
managed to
interesting,
they do a good
though.
job building up the character.
Yeah.
Like I had no recollection of the moment where he says to Riker, there's kids on this ship.
Oh, I love that. He's
so
like, I
bad
hate
with
kids.
Yeah, and I'm just like, this is great.
Yeah. That was funny.
And the moment with he and Dr. Crusher, where he's like, oh, you can transfer off the ship because and she's like,
I'm shipping that relationship already.
good idea. So yeah, and that so there's a lot there, and I think they utilized Deanna Troi well because they explain right away that she can get the emotions, but she can't. She's not a telepath.
Yeah.
Which I think for a storytelling standpoint, you don't want a telepath.
No, I like the emotions because that tells you a lot, though.
Yeah,
too.
it tells you a lot, but it's like, emotionally,
she's only half too.
if somebody's lying to you, the emotion might not come through.
That's true.
So, but if you're a telepath, you're like, lying.
Get the lying
like
cat.
All right, like on Legion, he's gonna know if somebody's lying to him, David. So
in Saga, there's a lying cat. There's a cat that anytime somebody's lying, it's like lying. That's the only word it can say, but it knows when someone's lying. And then her and Riker, I was just like, oh, they totally boned each other. I was like, yeah, they had that chemistry.
There's that
we
moment
know how we. Your abilities, yes.
And that's and you should definitely ship that as well.
Okay, yeah.
As we see later, actually in some of the movies. And so there are, of course, there's you can read a lot about what they were trying to do, but I'm just trying to focus on what we actually got. And Data's very interesting. He is a little bit more robotic here because he'll do things like inquiry, and like instead of just asking a question, it's like.
Well, this is him kind of at the start, so I suppose he should be more robotic.
He's not brand new at this point.
No, but I mean,
but I know what you mean. He's still a newer being.
Well, I like how he sat up on the one part where he's with Riker, and he does a nice physicality. That I'm like, I like that. That was good.
And
he lifts him up
helps
too,
Riker
and he's
up.
like, whoa.
So I thought there was a lot of good stuff like that.
The whistling was kind of fun too.
Yeah.
And I was like, why can't he whistle? But I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah. So him striving to be human, obviously the reference about
I
Pinocchio.
like Pinocchio. That was so funny.
So I think that I don't know. It was fun. It was fun to see.
Yeah.
There are a lot of moments that are fun to see.
Beauty and the Beast, human again. Beauty and the Beast isn't out yet.
Not yet.
This came out in the 80s. Yeah. I was like, wait a minute, not yet. I was kind of something I thought of after because I had seen it beforehand in a way though. When you learn that essentially it's a ship that's alive, I was like, hey, this is like in Farscape. Because have you watched?
I have not seen Farscape.
Farscape, the ship they're in is alive, but it's like a whale essentially. But it's a ship, but like it's essentially a whale, and it's alive. And the pilot is an alien species that symbiotically, permanently becomes attached to the ship. And like that's the only way for the pilot species could ever travel the galaxies is to bond with these kind of planetary ships. Moya, for anybody. They named the ship. Her name's Moya, and like, it's interesting because I'm like, I wonder if they were inspired by this to have a ship that's alive.
Very likely,
because that's more like the 90s. Because I saw that on DVD. That I'm like, I'm pretty sure that came out more in the 90s.
And then. I did want to talk about a couple members of the crew before we moved on. So first of all, great cameo by Bones, DeForest Kelly.
Yeah, that was so funny.
And they don't actually say his name, which I think is kind of cool.
Well, that's why I was like, he's supposed to be Bones, right?
Yeah, because he is Bones, and just ironically, so he's like, what did they say? He's 130 or 120?
Yeah.
Anyway, in the real world, he's actually the one who died first, DeForest Kelly, because he was the oldest. So it's just interesting that he's the one who lives on. And
137, I think.
And what I read was that he insisted on only working for SAG minimum. He refused to be paid any extra because he just was doing it as a favor, to send the show off as a favor to Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they paired him up with Data. I thought that's actually kind of perfect.
Well, because he's like, you're kind of like a Vulcan.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And the one character who doesn't really work in season 1, Denise Crosby, Tasha Yar, is actually...
Which one's that one?
She's the short, blonde head of security.
Yeah, I didn't dig her that much. She felt awkward.
Well... she she gets killed off during the first season.
Yeah, okay.
And then they kind of come up with a cool way to bring her back due to some nice time travel schematics.
I'm okay with a female security officer. I generally thought like it was possibly interesting, like a hot-headed, quick to action, but something about it, I didn't click with her.
Yeah, well, what they did is they put as head of security the person that makes sense, the Klingon. So Worf becomes head of security. So it actually, the show works a lot better without her.
He looks bad with the short hair too. We talked about ponytail or not. I don't like his short hair at all.
That wasn't
also,
great.
his makeup did not look as good in this episode.
It definitely wasn't.
It was like, ooh, someone didn't blend those lines. That prosthetic was a little awkward.
Yeah. And then, the reason why we ended up on this episode is because of Q. John Delancey, who I think does a great job as this character. What he's given to do, he does a good job with it. Yeah. It is a little bit of a silly character, and we were talking before show about how much I don't like magic, and that's why I don't love Q. And of course, there are many instances of magic throughout Star Trek, the original series, but he is a magical character, and I don't like when someone can do anything. And when it's in the context of superhero stories, I can kind of deal with it, but it's like in Star Trek, there shouldn't be someone who can do anything.
Like he's Superman. He's too powerful. That's
too
boring.
Powerful. Exactly. Yeah. And there's no kryptonite for Q. You know.
So also technically his species was Q, kind of.
Yes.
I think because they were like, "What are you?"
He is Q, but you see later we meet other Qs later. Yeah. So
are they male and female, or are they gender neutral?
This is one of the times where I wish Frank was here. Obviously, we always wish Frank was here. I think he would remember better than I do. I remember other male cues. I don't remember female cues, but I'm not giving you the answer that there are no female cues.
Well, I was going to say, or is it like Enemy Mine that they appear male, but they have both sexes?
That could be the case. Yeah. And it's interesting. So this episode, he's there to chew a lot of scenery with a lot of big, like, thou capitan.
Oh yeah,
and it's just big. And then like the weird like 21st century.
Oh, that military thing.
The
was
military
so
thing
weird.
with like
pacifier fluid.
They
drink.
snort coke or whatever to feel them.
That was
and
weird.
then the pointy headgear is always what my takeaway is of the episode.
Is that the,
like that with the
bonnet
weird hat
thing. Yeah.
And then I was just like, nope. So it doesn't really work.
And
but
makeup. He has like lipstick.
Yeah, it's an interesting vehicle for the pilot of the new show, which is like you have the opportunity to prove that humanity is not savage like it used to be. And even at the end, Q's like, but I'll leave, but only because it suits me. Oh, but by the way, I'm going to be back. So, and it's like, I'm going to keep an eye on you. And so that is kind of an interesting through line for the whole series.
Well, I like that Picard is like, I'm sick and tired of the, what was it? Superior species, like being judgmental and stuff. I'm like, well, at least you're calling him out on that.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think the courtroom scenes don't actually work very well for me.
They were very weird, but our main characters are like, this is weird.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's this is weird, yeah.
I guess we're in their place, but I'd be more curious that, like, are they on a planet that those people were real? Yeah. Or are they, because Tori. I want to call her Troy.
Yeah.
I want to call her Tori. Troy was like, this is real, but the thing is, the people there felt more like fillers.
I know. So I don't know exactly when and where they were. That they didn't do a good job explaining
that. Was weird.
But I don't know.
It's interesting.
It was.
You know what they do? Oh no, they're time traveling. I was like, Doctor Who has a scene like that where it's like a medieval court scene, where it's a bunch of people, but they're literally time traveling in that, I think. So.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And not that there's no shortage of time traveling in Star Trek as well. But I don't know. What did you think of Q? Have you seen Q in anything before?
No.
Yeah, because
he was
you've
very
heard me throw around
oh.
Q a lot and why I don't like him. But what did you think of Q in this episode?
Well, I like that you point out he does more stuff later, because what he does in this does seem like, no, he's just he is a special being that can do things they don't comprehend, because even Troy's kind of like, well, he's either very different from us or just very advanced. because he can make his appearance change, but nobody actually touches him. So we don't actually know if it's like literally a jacket, literally his hair change, or, you know, something like that, or if just an illusion, because we've had that already in Star Trek, so that's not too weird. But the transporting everybody to this whole environment, that's where you're like, ooh, that's a bit like, okay. I thought he was very overdramatic, but I felt I was very much on Picard's stance of like, oh, you're so annoying. And yeah, I generally agreed with Picard on everything. I just found him annoying in the way Picard did. Of like, you're not giving us chances, you're breaking your own rules, and you're not really listening, you're not really paying attention. Like those things, I was just like, ugh.
And by the way, it's funny, you said you're not listening, paying attention. I'm like, wait, is she talking to me? Because I was reading Star Drew in the chat does point out there were female cues in season 6.
Ah, okay, good.
So that, I don't know. I was still watching season 6. I just didn't remember. Anyway, before we run out of time, I wanted to highlight one of the guest actors in the episode. Playing the character of Groppler Zorn is an actor named
that was interesting.
Michael Bell. Now, you look at him and you're like, well, I don't think I really know that actor, but I recognized his voice, and I kept hearing him, and I'm like, boy, there's a lot of things that I know. So there are a lot of things that you might know him from, but for kids who watched a lot of cartoons in the 80s, you would know him from the Smurfs as Grouchy Smurf, Lazy Smurf, Handy Smurf, and Johan, who's one of the humans. And he was multiple Transformers in the TV series and Transformers the movies. The movie, singular, the original one. From G.I. Joe, he was Duke, and that's the voice that I think was mostly in my head.
And which one?
From the original G.I. Joe, he was Duke. Yeah. And from the original Voltron, not the Voltron that's on now, the original Voltron, he was both Lance and Sven. And he was the voice of Bruce Banner in the early 80s Incredible Hulk TV show.
Wow, he did a lot of voiceover.
So he did, so that's why I heard his voice, and I'm like, I really recognize him.
Georgie does a lot of voices too.
Jordy LeVar Burton.
Yeah, looking up his credits, I was like, oh, he's done a lot of VO as well.
Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to sort of use this as an opportunity to kind of tip the hat to Michael Bell because of all the voices. It was interesting to see him actually acting. He's done other things, but this is the only thing I've ever seen. And I think when I watched this 30 years ago... He was
visually interesting, like his posture and his hair.
Even though all those cartoons were fresh in my memory, I can't say that I recognized it 31 years ago. Anyway, just a little tidbit to bring to you all there. Anyway, we will be back next Sunday at 10 o'clock. And when we're on that show, we'll let you know where you can find us in the future after that and when and all that. But we will be back next week. I'm not entirely sure what we're doing. I think we're going to watch some more Q episodes. And I would say all of them, but I don't quite know how many there are.
You're like, hold on, let me check for that.
We're going to probably watch all of them, but just in case there's too many, we'll watch, say, 5, okay? Because if there's 10...
That's a heavy dog.
I know, 5. But I was just like, let's cap it at 5. Anyway.
We'll say 3 to 5.
3 to 5. All right. Yeah, Kari and I will
minimum 3 and... Yeah.
Minimum 3. Okay.
There we go.
Kari and I will trade messages during the week, and we'll see. We'll do at least 3. Anyway, so tune in next week, and we'll see you there. Thanks to Star Drew in the chat. And there were other people watching, but Star Drew was the one I was chatting. You can find me at Christian DMZ, Twitter and Instagram. Kari, where do people find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me online at Kari D Lane. That's Karidlane.
And I'll be here at AfterBuzz tomorrow night for Marvel TV Weekly, 7 Pacific. And stay tuned for when you can find that show as well. Anyway, thanks to everybody. Live long and prosper.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.